Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I grew up dealing with something most people only see in movies, and it's nothing like what they show on screen. When I was 15 years old, doctors told me I had bipolar schizophrenia. The diagnosis came after months of my parents noticing things weren't quite right. I'd hear voices sometimes or see things that weren't really there. My moods would swing wildly from one extreme to another without warning. It was terrifying for everyone involved, especially me. But here's the thing nobody tells you about schizophrenia. You're not automatically dangerous. You're not going to hurt people. You're just someone dealing with a medical condition that needs proper treatment. With the right medication and doctor supervision, you can live a completely normal life. The problem was finding that right combination. From 15 to 20 years old, my doctors and I went through what felt like endless trial and error. Some medications made me feel like a zombie. Others gave me terrible side effects. A few worked for a while before suddenly stopping. It was exhausting and frustrating, but we eventually found a balance that worked. By the time I turned 21, things had stabilized. For 6 straight years, I didn't have any serious symptoms. Sure, occasionally my medication would need minor adjustments when things felt slightly off, but nothing major. Nothing that disrupted my daily life or sent me back to that dark place. I was working a steady job, paying my bills, and living independently. Then 3 years ago, I decided to get a new apartment. The place I've been living in was fine, but the lease was ending and I wanted something closer to work. I found a decent 2-bedroom apartment that I could afford if I split it with roommates. That's how I ended up living with my 2 new roommates. I'm not going to use fake names for them. Their real names were Zach and Rachel, and honestly, they can deal with it. When I first met them, they seemed normal enough. A bit rough around the edges maybe, but not terrible. We split the rent 3 ways and agreed on basic house rules. I moved my stuff in and got settled during the first week. I set up my room, unpacked my belongings, and organized my medications in my dresser drawer. Because of my condition, I take quite a few different pills every day. Antipsychotic medication to keep the hallucinations away. Antidepressants to manage my mood swings. Anti-anxiety medication when things get overwhelming, plus a few others my doctor prescribed. These aren't your average over-the-counter pills either. They're strong prescription medications that keep my brain chemistry balanced. I count out my pills weekly and keep them organized so I never miss a dose. Missing doses can trigger symptoms, so I'm extremely careful about it. About 2 weeks after moving in, I noticed something strange. My pill count was off. I always know exactly how many pills I should have for each medication, but suddenly I was coming up short. At first, I thought maybe I miscounted or accidentally dropped some, but then it kept happening. Different medications would be missing pills at different times. It wasn't a mistake. Someone was taking them. The only people with access to my room were Zach and Rachel. I'd heard them talking openly about taking various pills to get high. They'd brag about popping benzos or taking painkillers they got from friends. It disgusted me, but I figured what they did was their business. Now they were making it my business by stealing my medication. I tried to ignore it at first. I didn't want to create conflict when I had to live with these people for months, but it kept happening. My medications weren't cheap, and more importantly, I needed them to function. After a few more days of pills disappearing, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted both of them in the living room one evening. I told them someone had been taking my medication from my room. Rachel acted shocked and asked why anyone would do that. Zach backed her up and claimed they never even went in my room. I explained that my pills kept disappearing and they were the only ones who could have taken them. Rachel said I was making a serious accusation and asked if I had any proof. Of course I didn't have proof. I hadn't set up cameras or anything. They denied everything and acted offended that I'd even suggested, but I knew it was them. The next day, I went out and bought a lock for my bedroom door. I installed it myself and started keeping my room locked whenever I left. My pills kept disappearing anyway. Somehow they were still getting into my room. Maybe they'd figured out how to pick the cheap lock. Maybe I'd forgotten to lock it once and They made a copy of my key. I had no idea, but I was furious. That's when I decided to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. See, one of the side effects of my strong medications is chronic constipation. It's not pleasant to talk about, but it's a real issue. My doctor prescribed me heavy-duty laxatives. When things get really backed up, they're small, pinkish pills that look fairly generic. If you didn't know what they were, you might mistake them for something recreational. One morning before leaving for work, I came up with my plan. I took the bottle of my antipsychotic medication from my drawer. I carefully removed all the real pills and replaced them with my laxative pills. The bottles looked identical from the outside. Then I put everything back exactly how it was and left for work. I spent the whole day wondering if my plan would work. Part of me felt guilty for potentially making someone sick, but the other part of me was tired of being stolen from. These weren't recreational drugs they were messing with. They were literally messing with my mental health and stability. When I got home that evening, I immediately knew something had happened. Both bathroom doors were closed. I could hear running water and other sounds I won't describe. Rachel emerged from one bathroom looking pale and sweaty. I asked if she was okay because she looked terrible. She said she thought she had food poisoning or something and had been sick all afternoon. I asked what she ate. She said she didn't know and maybe lunch was bad. Then she mentioned that Zach was sick too. I acted surprised and asked if both of them got sick from the same thing. She said it must have been something they shared. I had to work hard not to smile. She rushed back into the bathroom. Both of them spent the entire night running between their rooms and the bathrooms. I heard toilets flushing constantly, heard them groaning and complaining to each other. At one point, Zach asked Rachel if she'd taken anything unusual that day. The realization must have hit them both at the same time. The next morning, they both looked exhausted and miserable. Neither of them said a word to me. My medications never went missing again after that night. Not a single pill. I spent 12 years working my way up from bar staff to pub manager in one of the bigger pub companies in the UK. When the pub I managed got sold to another company, I had a choice to make. I could go through TUPE, which basically means getting transferred over to the new owners along with the building, or I could stay with my current company and take a different site. I chose to stay. I thought loyalty would pay off. I thought moving to a new pub within the same company would be the safer bet. The new pub was a nightmare from day one. It was in a rough area, the locals were difficult, and the building itself needed serious work. But none of that compared to my new area manager. She made my life absolute hell. She micromanaged everything I did. She would show up unannounced, go through my office, check my paperwork, and question every single decision I made. But that was not even the worst part. She was corrupt. Properly corrupt. One of the first things she did was tell me we could not call out Rent-A-Kill anymore unless it was an absolute emergency. We had rats in the cellar. Actual rats. I told her we needed to get it sorted immediately, but she refused. She told me that my maintenance budget was already too high and that I should just put some traps down and deal with it myself. I explained that we needed professionals because it was a hygiene issue and we served food there. She said she did not care and told me to make it work. I put the traps down, but the problem kept getting worse. Customers started complaining about noises coming from the kitchen area. I kept pushing her to let me call Rent-A-Kill, but she would not budge. She wanted her budgets to look good so she could get her bonus. Then there was the food waste issue. We would defrost meat and fish for service, and if it did not sell, we were supposed to throw it out. Food safety law is really clear on that. You cannot refreeze something once it has been defrosted. But she told me to do it anyway. She said I was wasting too much stock and told me to just put it back in the freezer and use it tomorrow. I told her that was illegal and that we could poison someone. She said no one was going to know and told me to stop being so precious about it. I refused and I threw the food out like I was supposed to. She wrote me up for poor stock management. She also took bribes from suppliers. There was this one beer brand. She kept pushing me to stock even though it did not sell well in our area. I found out later she was getting kickbacks from the rep. She did the same thing with spirits. She would insist we stock certain brands, and if we did not hit sales targets for them, she would come down on us hard. Meanwhile, she was getting free holidays and cash payments under the table. And then there were the affairs. She was sleeping with at least two managers in her area that I knew of. Both of them got preferential treatment. Their budgets were never questioned. Their stock loss was never a problem. They could do whatever they wanted and she would cover for them. I tried to play by the rules. I tried to do things properly, but she punished me for it at every turn. She screwed with my bonus. She gave me impossible targets. She would schedule surprise visits and then write me up for the smallest things. She made my life a living hell, and there was nothing I could do about it because she had all the power. Eventually, it broke me. I have always had some mental health issues, but they were manageable. Under her, they spiraled completely out of control. I ended up having a total breakdown. I was off work for 4 months. At one point, I was so bad that the doctors were talking about sectioning me and putting me in a facility against my will for my own safety. I was not the first manager in her area to end up off sick with mental health problems either. She had a pattern of destroying people. When I finally came back to work, I took a voluntary demotion just to get out of her area. I went back to being an assistant manager at a different pub. The pay cut was significant, but I did not care. I needed to get away from her. A few months later, I heard she had left the company. The rumor was that she had been given the choice to resign or be fired. About a year after that, I was out with a friend at another pub chain. We were just having a drink and catching up when I saw her. She was sitting at a table with another person going through paperwork. It looked like a business meeting. I asked one of the staff members who she was. The staff member told me that she was their area manager and that she was meeting with their pub manager. I felt sick. She had moved to another company and was doing the exact same job. I knew without a doubt that she was pulling the same tricks she had pulled with us. People like her do not change. So I decided to do something about it. I went home and created a throwaway email address. Then I sent detailed whistleblower complaints to both the Food Standards Agency and her new company's head office. I told them everything. The pest control issues, the refreezing of defrosted food, the bribes from suppliers, the time clock fraud where she made managers clock staff out before they had finished their shifts to cut labor costs. I laid it all out. I did not know for sure that she was doing all of these things at her new company, but I knew her. I knew how she operated. I was willing to bet money that she was up to the same old tricks. A few weeks later, I heard her pub had been shut down, not just given an improvement notice, but closed with a prohibition order. That meant it was serious. They only do that when the problems are so bad that the place is genuinely dangerous. The local press had a field day with it. They ran multiple stories about the closure, and her name was all over them. The case went to court. I followed the stories online, reading every update I could find. I never found out the final outcome. I do not know if she got fined or if she faced any criminal charges, but I do know that her name is now permanently linked to that scandal. Anyone who Googles her will find those articles. Any future employer who does their due diligence will see exactly what kind of person she is. She destroyed my mental health and nearly ruined my life. She did the same to other people, and she got away with it for years because she was good at hiding it, and because the people above her did not care enough to look closely. I hope she never works in the industry again. My job at the distribution center involves a lot of standing, lifting, and dealing with the occasional difficult customer when I'm sent out to help with deliveries. But nothing in my job description prepared me for what I witnessed on that afternoon. I had clocked out early that day because we'd finished our shipment ahead of schedule. My supervisor told me to take off around 2 p.m., so I headed to the grocery store to grab some essentials before heading home. I figured I'd beat the after-work rush, but apparently everyone else had the same idea. The place was packed. I grabbed what I needed and made my way to the checkout. The line snaked back toward the produce section. I sighed and settled in, knowing this was going to take a while. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through messages, trying to pass the time. That's when I noticed her. She came strutting in like she owned the place. heels clicking against the floor so loud you could hear it over the general noise of the store. She had this look on her face like everyone was beneath her. The line moved forward slowly. I watched as Karen surveyed the situation with obvious annoyance. She wasn't even in line yet, just standing there by the magazines looking frustrated. She kept checking her watch and huffing like the world was inconveniencing her personally. Then I saw her eyes lock onto something. She started moving, weaving between people, clearly looking for a way to skip ahead. She pushed past an elderly man who gave her a disapproving look. She ignored him completely. Then she set her sights on a young woman who was clearly very pregnant. The woman was focused on her phone, probably trying to distract herself from the discomfort of standing for so long. Her hand rested on her belly and she shifted her weight from foot to foot. She had a small basket with just a few items in it. Karen didn't ask. She didn't say, "Excuse me," politely. She just squeezed herself into the gap in front of the pregnant woman with a barely audible mutter that might have been an "excuse me" but sounded more like a dismissal. Her cart was overflowing with groceries, easily 30 or 40 items. The pregnant woman looked up from her phone, confused at first. Then realization crossed her face. She cleared her throat. The pregnant woman spoke up and told Karen that there was a line here. She mentioned she was 7 months pregnant and had been standing patiently. She said it would be nice if Karen could do the same. Karen whipped around and I could see the disdain written all over her face from where I stood several people back. Karen snapped back and asked if the woman thought she owned the world just because she was pregnant. She said she had places to be. She added that she had a meeting at 3:30 p.m. and couldn't waste time standing in line. The whole line had gone quiet. People were watching now. Some pretended not to notice, looking intently at their phones or the magazine racks, but everyone was listening. The pregnant woman responded by saying that if she weren't pregnant, she would show Karen what's up, but luckily for Karen, she was pregnant. That did it. Karen's jaw clenched. She took a step toward the pregnant woman, getting right in her space. Karen told the pregnant woman that she thought she was tough. She said that, pregnant or not, she would show her. She started going on about how she didn't care about anyone's sob stories. She said being pregnant didn't give anyone special privileges. Karen raised her hand like she was going to slap the woman, but then, in a movement that made my heart stop, she drew her leg back. She was going to kick. She was actually going to kick a pregnant woman in the stomach. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. The pregnant woman's eyes went wide with fear. Her hands instinctively moved to protect her belly. She stepped back, but there was nowhere to go with people behind her. People around us gasped. I started to move forward, but I was too far away. Then this massive guy, who'd been standing a few people behind me, moved faster than I would have thought possible for someone his size. He covered the distance in 2 steps and grabbed Karen around the waist, yanking her backward just as her foot started to swing forward. Karen's kick connected with nothing but air. The big guy held her tight, pinning her arms to her sides. She thrashed and screamed, trying to break free. The big guy shouted that she needed to stop if he told her she wasn't hurting anyone today. Karen screamed at him to let her go. She yelled that she would sue him for assault. She threatened to call the police on him instead. She kicked and struggled, but he held firm. His face was calm but determined. A couple of cashiers had already hit their emergency buttons, and within seconds, store security came running over. The security guards took over, each grabbing one of Karen's arms. She was still screaming, calling everyone names I won't repeat here. She kept saying she was being attacked and that we were all witnesses. The big guy stepped back, breathing hard. The pregnant woman thanked him. She said he might have saved her baby. Her voice was shaking and tears were starting to form in her eyes. The store manager came rushing over, apologizing to the pregnant woman. He offered to get her a chair, some water, anything she needed. A few women from the line had already surrounded her, making sure she was okay. One of them offered to stay with her until her husband could come pick her up. The manager apologized and said this was completely unacceptable. He told her they had already called the police. He also said that Karen was banned from the store effective immediately. Karen insisted she didn't do anything. She claimed the pregnant woman had threatened her first. She shouted that everyone had heard it. One of the security guards told her to calm down. He said they had cameras and had seen everything. He mentioned that the footage clearly showed her attempting to assault a pregnant customer. The police arrived within minutes. They took statements from several of us who'd witnessed what happened. I gave my account of everything I saw. The big guy explained how he had to intervene to prevent harm. At least 5 other customers backed up the story. The pregnant woman decided to press charges. Assault with intent to harm. Possibly more since she was pregnant and the attack was aimed at her belly. The officers told her that this could carry serious penalties. They let Karen out in handcuffs. She was still yelling, still insisting she was the victim. She kept saying she was going to sue everyone in the store. Nobody bought it. The pregnant woman was shaken but unharmed. The paramedics checked her out just to be safe. They monitored the baby's heartbeat and checked for any signs of stress. Everything was fine with the baby. Her husband arrived about 20 minutes later. He had rushed over when she called him. He thanked the big guy repeatedly and shook his hand. He also thanked the manager and the rest of us who had stepped up. The store manager gave the pregnant woman a $50 gift card and apologized again for what happened. He said it was the least he could do. When I finally checked out and walked to my car, I couldn't stop thinking about what almost happened. That woman tried to hurt an unborn child over a spot in line. Over nothing. Over maybe saving 5 minutes at most. I kept replaying the moment in my head. If that big guy hadn't been there and hadn't moved so fast, that baby could have been seriously hurt. The pregnant woman could have been seriously hurt. All because Karen couldn't wait her turn like everyone else. I really hope she rots in jail this time. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.